It's a great honor for me to being entrusted with such an important function at this event. Now, International Women's Day was originally called International Working Women's Day, and it is normally celebrated in March. The focus of these celebrations ranges from a celebration of respect, appreciation, and love towards women specifically, as well as women's economic, political, and social achievements. Originally, it was started as a socialist political event, primarily in Europe and in the Soviet bloc. But over the years and over time, this political thrust was lost, and it simply became an occasion where people can express their love towards women. In other regions, however, the political and human rights theme designated by the United Nations runs strong, and political and social awareness of the struggles of women worldwide are brought out and examined. National Women's Day in South Africa is a public holiday celebrated on the 9th of August. This day specifically commemorates a very, very important and significant event in our history towards democracy. It commemorates the 1956 march, as alluded to by Karine, where more than 20,000 women from all walks of life walked to the Union buildings in Pretoria. They took petitions signed by over 100,000 people and delivered it to the then Prime Minister J.G. Strydom. In these petitions, they were specifically aimed at addressing the past laws that required South Africans as black under the Population Registration Act to carry an internal passport. It was known as a pass. That served to maintain population segregation, control urbanization, and manage migrant labor during the apartheid era. The first National Women's Day was celebrated on the 9th of August 1994. In 2006, a reenactment of that march was staged as a 50th anniversary of the initial event, and many of the veterans were still present during that march. So on the 9th of August, can you imagine here, more than 20,000 South African women of all races staged this march to the Union building, and they protested against the Urban Areas Act of 1950, commonly known as the Pass Laws. The march was led, as Karine said, by Lillian Ngoyi, Helen Joseph, Rahima Musa, and Sophia Williams. The women left bundles and bundles of petition containing more than 100,000 signatures at the office of the Prime Minister. They stood silently for about 30 minutes, and then they started singing the protest song that was specifically composed in honor of this occasion, Watinta Bafazi, Watinte Nkondo. That means now you have touched the women, you have struck a rock. In the 59 years since then, this phrase is now turned into you strike a woman, you strike a rock. And this has come to represent women's courage and strength in South Africa. Today here at UJ, we're extremely honored to host one of these women with the strength of a rock and the heart of golden honey. Ms. Sophia Teresa Williams de Bruin is here with us today, and she has willingly agreed to share some of her experience and wisdoms with us at UJ. Sophia de Bruin was born in 1938 in village Port Elizabeth, which was then a mixed area that had different nominations and different nationalities living side by side. She was raised in the home of her grandparents with an elder brother and an elder sister. When her grandparents died, however, her father, Henry Williams, bought a property in Village Board with his older brother. She started her schooling career there in Village Board, attending the St. Patrick Catholic School in the north end of Port Elizabeth. After her father joined the army to fight in the Second World War, Sophia's mother, Frances Elizabeth, moved the family out of Village Board and to a housing development specifically built for colored people. This housing development was called Chowder. Sophia attended the local St. James Catholic School there, where she continued her primary education. During her higher primary education, however, she started working, and she started working because she wanted to earn pocket money. Here, the workers of the Van Lane textile factory singled her out to solve their problems with the factory bosses. She later became the shop steward and increased her involvement in representing and articulating the grievances of the workers. At the textile factory, she rose to become the executive member of the Textile Workers Union in Port Elizabeth. She later also became the founder member of the South African Congress of Trade Union, now the predecessor of COSATU. The Congress Alliance, consisting of the Indian Congress and the ANC, was grappling with issues at the time, such as the Group Areas Act, Separate Development Act, and the Bantu Education Act. It was then that the Coloured People Congress was formed. In 1955, Sophia was appointed as a full-time organizer of the Coloured People's Congress in Johannesburg. When the Coloured Population Act was put forward, Sophia was assigned to work with a lawyer, Shalumath Muller, an attorney whose husband, Mike Muller, was Secretary General of the Textile Workers Union. This organization had already been banned at the time. Together, they helped to organize the women around past issues with women such as Helen Joseph, Lillian Ngoyi, and Rahima Musa. At the same time, Sophia was also very active and at the forefront of the Congress of the People in Kliptown. She led the Women's March to the Union buildings in 1956 and is currently the only surviving leader of this historical event. She currently serves as a Human Resource Manager at the Commission of Gender Equality. She is also a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC Women's League and a member of the Saartjie Baartman Reference Group. So, having heard her significant contribution to what has become a new and democratic South Africa, I'd like to ask you to stand up and welcome Ms. Sophia Teresa Williams de Bruin to UJ and have her share some of her experiences.
Thank you, Professor, for all the kind words that you have said. And good morning, everybody. Beautiful surroundings that I'm in today. Feels very calm. It feels very good to be here amongst you. And also to say Happy Women's Month. We are coming towards the end of Women's Month, and I hope all of you have celebrated it appropriately, enjoyed yourself, and also reflected of the meaning of Women's Month. Because many times we just enjoy ourselves and we don't really reflect and understand the month of women. And this celebration of Women's Month this year is 59 years of the demonstration or the march to Pretoria, 59 years. So those are many, many years ago that I've marched with the women of Mam Ngoy, Mam Helen Joseph, Mam Rahima Musa. And they were my mother's age when I marched with them. But I also wanted to say thank you for having invited me here today to be amongst you and to share with you. I was wondering what should I speak about, and I had so many ideas at what point should I come in, but I was persuaded, just tell the story of this march. And that is what I'm going to do, and I hope I'm not going to be too long-winded, and I have a weakness of speaking too much. So you must forgive me and give me a nudge when you feel that I've gone on too long. But I'd like to acknowledge Mam Flory Daniels, who is our most prestigious guest of honor today. And as I browsed through the brochure at the table, I was struck by her life's work. And it made me think of the women of our generation, their dedication, that commitment, that selflessness that she had, Mam Flory, in the work that you do in the community for so long. And I commend you and I congratulate you. And I am very proud to be in your company, in your presence. Thank you very much. I also want to say thank you to the University of UJ for giving us this platform and this premises where I'm part of you today. And I want to congratulate UJ for all the good work that they've done. And UJ, as I'm told, is regarded as one of the most successful mergers. They've merged with WITS and RAU and VISTA and so on. I only knew RAU. Not that I was part of RAU, but I heard of this Afrikaans university at that time. And I think the merger, the taking over or the merger of RAU took place when we were outside what we call exile, many years ago, 20-something years ago. And when I came back, it was now UJ. I have a grandson that also qualified here in UJ. He has now completed his studies. And UJ also, I think we are celebrating 10 years of UJ's existence. But let me say to UJ, please, all the professors that are sitting here, thank you for the good work that you continue to do in training our society and our young people for a better life and a better country. Thank you very much. I'm not sure where to start with the story, the wonderful story of the great march of August 9th, and the professor, when she introduced me here, so eloquently and so appropriately stated the reasons why women felt that they should protest at the union buildings. yes, Professor, those laws that you are talking about was all the reasons, those many, many laws that restricted women's lives and the lives of the general public. And the suffering and the strife that went on during that time, and the limitations of people's existence. Thank you. And so the women, but what we normally say, the cherry on the top, and what I would say what broke the camel's back was the last straw, was the extension that was going to happen to women of carrying a pass. In other words, the men were already carrying passes, as you know, and they were sort of born into it and didn't do anything about it and accepted it and suffered under it. And the women observed their husbands suffering, and the children observed it. And we don't want to go into what really happened when a man is searched for a pass or asked for a pass. We know about the manhandling, and if he doesn't produce that pass quickly enough, he's hauled off to jail. So women started thinking about the same suffering that they would undergo and the indignity that they would suffer if they are asked for a pass. And they said, enough is enough. We are not going to allow ourselves to that degradation. And that is where the Federation of South African Women came in. Under that umbrella, women were mobilized and organized throughout the country. At that time, we had the 4 provinces only. We did not have the 9 provinces that we have today. We had only the Free State, Orange Free State, it was called, Transvaal, Natal, and the Cape. And we came together and mobilized everybody, all women, actually, under the umbrella of the Federation of South African Women, which comprised of women in the African National Congress Women's League. Many times the younger generation thinks and used to say that it was the African National Congress Women's League that organized the march. But I think nowadays they understand, because the records have been corrected. And so they know now that it was the umbrella, under the umbrella of the Federation of South African Women, which is known as FETSO. And the women, the different organizations under that umbrella was the trade unions, as SACTU at that time. It was the church women. It was the different trade unions where women were members of the trade union. It was the domestic workers. It was the stokvels, because in those days stokvels was the only sort of money-making small organizations that existed, and so on. So all these different organizations were mobilized and organized. And of course, I was one of those organizers, together with Mom Goy, Mom Lillian, Mom Helen Joseph. They were my mother's age. At that time, Mom Helen Joseph was already 51. And so we had nothing. We had no resources. We had no money. Everybody was poor. How did we organize 20,000 women to the union buildings? How did we do it? And it is a story that I can tell over and over with respect, with honesty, with integrity, that as we went round the country in Helen Joseph's little car, one little car took us everywhere. And we actually named that car Congress Connie. So Congress took us everywhere, to the four corners of South Africa. And I'm not saying only us four, but we were the main runners in the car, and the other women organized in their respective provinces. When we go to these provinces, I come from Port Elizabeth, and when I was sent to Port Elizabeth, Mam Frances Baard, some of you don't know these names, an icon of our struggle, of our women's struggle. Mam Frances Baard, Mam Hendrika Dragoner, Mam Chrissy Jessen, and I'd like you to know these names, because nowadays it only seems as if non-Africans were not participating in the struggle. So I'm giving you these names to show you that there were colored women and many white women, and our Indian women were also part of organizing and struggling to bring this democracy and to bring this day about for women. So in Port Elizabeth in particular, when we speak in terms of we had nothing, how did we bring about 20,000 women with nothing, no resources? In Port Elizabeth, the women would gather themselves into their branch meetings, have their branch meetings, and they would make tea, and there would be scone, the humble scone. And they would sell that scone for a tikkie, which you don't know about anymore. It was a currency of that time, and a tikkie for a cup of tea, which is a sixpence. And then they would also cook a stew of chicken, which was their own chicken in their yards, make chicken stew, and they would sell it for a shilling. And that is how they raise funds. And when I say I'm speaking in particular for the women of Port Elizabeth, over a period of time they had 90 pounds sterling and booked 2 railway coaches that brought women to Pretoria. Other women in other places did the same, and they also crochet little garments, knitted, sewed, and sold it amongst themselves and amongst other women. I'm making this point because nowadays, as you know, at the stadiums, you can find 80,000 people going to a stadium or a mass meeting. And you will see the coaches, beautiful air-conditioned coaches lined up to take people to the stadiums. And when they get there, they'll find a t-shirt and a cap. All of us that go to these stadiums, we know it. And those that don't know it, we're telling you, cap and a t-shirt. And you will also expect to find a pack, a lunch pack. Am I right? The women had nothing like that. When they traveled, by any means in the train coaches that they rented this in PE, others did their own things to get to Pretoria in other provinces, with taxis, with buses, with any means that they could get there. They traveled with their, what was called then, their scaftins. And we all know what is a scaftin. And what was in that scaftin? As I stand here before you, honestly telling you, they had a piece of fish and a piece of bread, and they also had, others had a piece of pap with a piece of meat. Others came with their ngushu. And that is what they did. because they knew it was a norm that they depended on nobody. They depended on themselves, that they expected nothing where they were going to. All that they knew, that they had this determination. And that is how the women marched to Pretoria. You see in that clip there, we are standing there with loads and loads of papers on our arms. What were those documents? Many times when I'm interviewed by journalists and reporters, they ask me, Mom Sophia, what were those things that you carried on your arms? And I'll explain to them that those were the petitions that the women signed. And as a professor alluded to, it was those laws that they were talking about, that we are women, poor women, we are simple women. We've come to you, we are pleading with you to repeal these laws under which we are suffering, and so on and so forth. Those were the petitions that they were supposed to hand over to Strydom. The figures of how many women went to Pretoria, without a doubt, was 20,000. And there could have been more. Why I'm saying there would have been more is because some of the women were detained on that day. Some of the women didn't know when they arrived from other provinces in Pretoria where the union buildings were situated. And so they asked. And they were told, ask there, and that was a policeman. So when they asked the policeman manhandled them, shoved them in the van, and locked them up for the day. Some taxis were detained. Some taxis were told that if you carry these women or transport them to the union buildings, you will not get a license again to run a taxi business. So those were some of the things that it was. We know it would have been more than 20,000 women. And how do we know it was actually 20,000 women? I'm not sure if some of you remember the name of Mayor Ruth Mompati and Mom Bertha Goa. Now these were very prominent women, very prestigious icons of our struggle. They have left us. They are no more with us. Mom Bertha, myself, and Mayor Ruth were very close doing Congress work here in South Africa, before, during, and after. When I'm saying after, I mean the latter days of our democracy. We stayed close together. And I remember we were asked in 2007 by an NGO in Cape Town to come and speak to some young people. In the morning, it was going to be students, as you call them, learners today. In the afternoon, it was going to be young ladies. And in the evening, the NGO was going to have a gala, ball or dinner, where it was going to be a ball, and it was called a butterfly ball. And they told us, you must come with your evening gowns, and you must be ready for a butterfly to be painted on your cheek for the ball. And so we laughed, Mom Bertha, Mayor Ruth, and myself. So we went to Cape Town, and in the morning we were fetched to start off with a program to speak to the young students. And they came in their uniforms, and they were seated in front of us. We were sitting like on a dais. And we had to talk about this August 9th day. And each of us spoke about it. Each of us had a part to say. And they were looking at us, and young people are very smart. And one young girl piped up and said, "But how do you know you were 20,000 women?" Now, Mary Ruth was a little bit cheeky, very outspoken, and she said, "Why do you ask me such a thing? I know we were 20,000 women because Ruth, Bertha, and myself were the ones who counted the petitions as the women handed it over, while Sophie, Lillian, and Helen were standing there at the top. We received the petitions, and as the women handed over the petitions to us, we counted, and my arm and Bertha's arm was heavy and tired from all the petitions, and we counted 20,000. So you hear now, 20,000, she was telling this here, very, very determinedly. So it is without a doubt that the number was 20,000 women, as recorded also in the history books. And of course, as you saw us with those petitions going to Stridom's office, knocking on his door, Mom and Goy in front, Helen behind her, Marahima, and I'm the last one. And Stridom's clerks opened the door. And Mom Goy asked to see Stridom. And they said Stridom wasn't there. And Mom Goy said, "But Mr. Stridom knew we were coming. How come he's not here?" No, he's not here. Then Mom Goy said, "Here are the petitions that we brought to him, that we expected him to receive from us." So the clerk was a bit hesitant to take the petitions respectfully. So Ma'am Goy was a little bit irritated, and she just pushed it on him. So like forcing him to take it. And he refused. His arms didn't want to hold it, and she left it like that. It fell on the ground, and we all put it on top of him. It was sprawled on the ground. I was the last one. I put it on the table. And Ma'am Goy came back to face the 20,000 women and told them. But before I go to the part of what happened when she explained to them that Stridom had run away for us, I want to just cast my mind back. And as I see you beautifully sitting here in your beautiful colors, what stands out in my mind and is one of the highlights of that march is when we arrived there, and Helen, the four of us were standing, what they call the amphitheater at the top, and the women marched up the step by step. And as I looked, I got a lump in my throat, because the women, and as they sat down, it was just this army of women, this multitude of women. And it was like a relief which said we made it, because we were never sure. We were never sure whether we were going to get the women that we thought should be coming after our hard work. Our hard work, can you imagine having no resources, no money, helping one another with a little bit that you have, and organizing 20,000 women, and when you look, how can you feel otherwise? How can you feel otherwise but swelled up with joy? And the tears running down your face is from joy and appreciation that women really did come and that they were committed. As they were walking up the steps, their beauty in the colorful, the women from the reserves, as we called it, the villages, had those colorful blankets and the headdress, very colorful, ochre and browns and orange, And the Indian women had their colorful saris on. And then those of us, that is the 55 march that you see there. This one I'm talking about is the 56 one where we had the uniform on, the emerald green uniform with the black skirts. And so there were those of us who had our uniforms on, and then there were the everyday dress that women had. And that made such a impressive, colorful picture that it stays in my psyche. It's something that I'll never forget. But on top of that was the dignity of the women as they marched up the steps. The gracefulness of those women as they marched. I'm talking of the steps that they took. And in a dignified way. No laughing and talking. Nobody said to them they can't talk and they shouldn't laugh. They were just dignified and just respectful. And maybe a little bit afraid because nowhere ever was a black person allowed in the union buildings. And they respected that perhaps. Silently, dignifiedly, gracefully, with determination. And when they got inside, they sat themselves down on the green grass, laying their babies next to them, those that came with their babies, taking them off their backs and putting them down. So when we came back from Stridom's office, and Man Goy said to them, "We have carried out your mandate." Of course, we didn't use the word mandate then. "We have carried out your mandate, but Stridom was not there to receive your petitions. He ran away for you." And at that moment, a woman started singing Watinti Bafazi. And the whole crowd of 20,000 women joined in. And as the professor said here, it means you've struck the women. You've struck the woman, you've struck a rock, you will die. So that song has become immortalized. It is a clarion call of women. It is a symbol of dedication and determination and commitment. Then the women, after Man Goy asked them to keep a moment of silence, which was actually half an hour of silence, the national anthem was sung. After the national anthem was sung, the women dispersed, and as gracefully and as quietly and as dignifiedly as they came, they went back into the streets of Pretoria, got into their transport, others walked to the bus stations, to the train stations. None of them were angry because Stridom ran away for them, and that anger, they strike people or was rude to anybody. What they did with that anger, that Stridom ran away for them, they channeled it into that song and rather sang Watinti Bafazi, channeled it in a dignified way and sang. And as you know today, ladies and gentlemen, so many things have gone wrong in our country. And this very Kosatu, as you know, when they march, the roads are cordoned off for them. The police are too afraid to have people too close to them. And when they did not get the joy of a premier or a minister or a MEC to take their, what we call a petition or memorandum from them, that anger, where do they channel it in? The first person they meet, unfortunately, it may be a vendor. They strike him, they kick his goods, they break shop windows, they do all kinds of things that are not pleasant. So I'm just saying, it's a far cry from that time to this age that we are living in, where so much has gone wrong. And the values of our people are destroyed. The women of 1956 and even before, because we took the values from Mam Charlotte Mateka, who was there before. And they handed the baton over to that generation from which I came. And we have already handed over the baton to the younger generation, to women like you, your age, in whatever aspect that you are living in. You may not necessarily be a politician. To say that we in the ANC, in the Women's League, have handed the baton over to the next generation of women to carry on the work that was done by the previous generation. You may just be a woman in your own sphere of life, in your business, in whatever you do in your department, in your company, but the baton has been handed over, irrespective, which means that you should carry on the values from which you came from. Those values that was inculcated to you in your home. And I often say, I don't really blame people, young people, or children today when they go wrong. I'm saying that no child have ever asked to be on this earth. They don't ask. We know what parents do when they want to have a child. Many times it takes too long, and we know that parents go out of their way to want a child. And these children are wanted by parents, and when they are born, what happens then? They come into the world innocently. Innocently. So what should really happen? As parents, should we not then lay a proper foundation for them? And our foundations, one foundation means a different thing to me and to the next one. Are our foundations all the same? A strong foundation, but also good examples around them. A strong foundation or a good foundation doesn't work by itself. There should be good values in the home. There should be good examples around families. How mothers speak to father in a respectable way, and how we relate to our neighbors in a respectful way, which means that our children, as they grow up, will interact with neighbors and friends and around them as they grow up respectfully. And that is how we build a strong nation, I think. Values around us, around everybody. And maybe I've spoken too long now. I'm not sure if I should end, because I see the program director is whispering I should come to an end. So I'm just trying to say there's a lot more that I can say, but thank you, program director. I did ask to be nudged when I go over the limit. And so I want to say to everyone here, go in peace, stay well, live long, live healthy. Please live healthy lives. Somebody was saying at another event, giving some tips, Dr. Gwen, Dr. Gwen, who was a Deputy Minister of Health, was giving some tips on Saturday at another event. And my turn to speak, I said to the audience that I've accepted all the tips long ago what Dr. Gwen is now giving to you. So if you want to be an old person but not look old, take those tips. Malibong Gwen.
The University of Johannesburg. Rethink, reinvent.